Hello friends, thanks for tuning in. This is Eric, KJ4YZI with HamRadioConcepts, and the final video of this little series I started about 2 months ago about HF bands, VHF bands, and UHF bands, showing you one band at a time per video to give you a little more education as a newly licensed operator or the most seasoned professional. Now in this video we're going to talk about several UHF bands at one time in this video just to wrap it all up. Yes, I know I need to shave, by the way. I know you're looking at that. Anyways, so someone that may start in ham radio, they may start with a dual band handheld, even a Bofeng or an ICOM or a Yaesu, and someone may come along and say, you're never going to use UHF. UHF is dead. Nobody uses UHF anymore. And that's really not the case. But there's a lot more than just UHF repeaters out there, and that's just what I want to show you, is what you can do and what's out there on UHF. I understand that UHF analog is lower in use than it has been in the years past because digital has taken over and some other areas utilizing UHF. So yes, you may not find a conversation scanning the UHF analog repeaters in your area with a handheld like this, but that doesn't mean UHF is gone. In fact, UHF is probably twice as popular now as VHF, and I'll show you why. Just specifically talking about DMR, we'll get into that. So let's talk about UHF just to show you you can do more than just talk on a repeater on UHF. Let's check it out. Looking once more at the U.S. Amateur Radio Bands chart from the ARRL in this final video of this series about the amateur radio bands, I circled 3 here in the last of the video: 70 centimeters, 33 centimeters, and 23 centimeters. Now these are all UHF, and I can cover all 3 of these somewhat in a timely manner in this video. The average person knows 70 centimeters as 440 or UHF. If you're a newly licensed person with, say, a entry-level handheld, you might call it VHF, UHF, and you call this 440. It actually spans from 420 to 450. So there's a lot going on in 30 megahertz band width. Tech, General, Advanced, Extra all have the same operating privileges for data and phone and image in the entire band. But with that being said, you want to make sure, I'll show you here shortly, where all the action is, because there's a lot of stuff going. Sideband, CW, AM, FM, packet, PSK, FT8, moon bounce, amateur television, repeaters, simplex. You want to make sure you know where that's at because, for example, someone using UHF for moon bounce, they're using every single bit of resource they have to decode and transmit to Earth-Moon-Earth contact. If you're out there covering it up with sideband because you're not in the right portion, that may hurt them. So there's different places where they suggest you use different modes. We'll talk about that here in a second. Notice the 3 stars between all 3 of these. And that says here, geographical and power restrictions may apply to all bands above 420. So you have to make sure, depending on the region you're in, there might be another secondary user, or you might be limited on power, depending on your region. So Tech, General, Advanced, and Extra cover the entire band. If you're a Tech, you have the same operating privileges as an Extra. And if you asked me, what do you do on UHF, or what have you done? Well, the majority of UHF is used for FM on repeaters in this day and age. Sideband, people using it on sideband for contesting, VHF, UHF contest day, as well as they use it for EME moon bounce. That's about what the most traffic is today on UHF. Now, when I say repeaters, that could be your standard analog repeater, which everybody's familiar with over the years, but a lot of people say UHF is dead. Nobody uses UHF on repeaters anymore. And quite frankly, UHF has been taken over by DMR. DMR, Moto Turbo, is utilizing almost 100% on UHF. There are probably some DMR repeaters on 2 meters, but the average repeater for DMR is on UHF. So maybe you don't hear anything on analog, but UHF is quite active these days, believe it or not. Probably more active than 2 meters, if you can believe that. But there are plenty of groups out there that operate on UHF, on analog for their Sunday night net or their daily traffic net, or just because they haven't done the switch to analog or to digital. There's always analog users out there. Looking at 33 centimeters, that's the 900 megahertz band. That's what we call it, 900. And that spans from 902 to 928, same privileges for all licensees. Now, I haven't done anything on 900, but there are some 900 repeaters out there. You have to look in your area to see where the action is. In fact, there's, I think, 2 900 megahertz repeaters south of me, but I've never talked on them. And your average radio doesn't have 900. You have to find a radio or use a TransVerdure to do it. Now, I mean, if your average handheld, your average mobile, your average all band, even a Yaesu FT991A, that thing's got everything right, but it doesn't have 900. So it's more of a band for, I would say, experimental, maybe. You know, because the average person, if you're a new tech and you're asking yourself, do I want to start with a first radio that's either 440 or 900, you're not going to ask that question, because starting as your first radio as a 900 is not a good idea, because there's not a lot there. And the range compared to something like 2 meters, there can be band openings and there can be longer distance contacts. But the average person's using this for microwave or their microwave rovers. They're using 900 for different grid squares, or there's a lot of things that you can do on 900, but the average person is not going to be on that band that you're looking to make contacts. Just a, assumption on my part. And then we look at 23 centimeters, 1.2 gig. Now I can tell you, 1.2 gig, that's a wide band. That spans from 1240 to 1300. That's 60 megahertz wide. That's a lot of band there. The only difference here is you can see novice is limited to 5 watts from 1270 to 1290. Other than that, Tech, General, Advanced, and Extra all have same operating privileges. And all 3 of these, like the legend says, you can do phone, data, image, you can do PSK, you can do FT8, you can do sideband, FM, AM, repeaters, simplex, moon bounce. There are people that have done, I think, moon bounce on 1.2 gig. Yes, does happen. So all 3 of these here, your most common is your 440, 70 centimeter band. And then if you look down here, all licensees except novices are authorized all modes on the following frequencies. Now look at this. From 2.3 all the way above 275 or 270. If you want to impress someone, say, yeah, I'm licensed all the way up to 270 gigahertz. Have I ever done anything on 240 gigahertz? No. But it's there, and I'm sure that's clearly or purely experimental. Point to point with microwave, line of sight, must be able to see the other station. I don't know if there's openings for 250 gigahertz, but you, the viewer, if you have done anything on these way high frequencies, I think these are extremely high, EHF and SHF, super high, extremely high, throw a comment out there, brag about it. Tell me what you've done on these higher bands, or tell me what you frequent, or if you have a club gathering on 900 or 1.2 gigahertz in your area. I'd love to see it. Now, I know the 1.2, the most fascinating for me on that band would be that D-Star actually has the ID1 radio, and it is a 1.2 gigahertz D-Star radio that can transmit data at 128 kilobits per second. And today's standard, that's not that fast, but think about it. That's a slow 1998 DSL connection that you can have over 1.2 gigahertz with a D-Star radio connected to a laptop for high-speed data. That's pretty cool when you talk about this compared to 2 meters, which would only be max 1200 bits per second. You can do 128 kilobits per second on 1.2 gigahertz, and that's because of the increased bandwidth for the signal. So you can check out the ICOM ID1 if you're interested in that and what people have done with that on 1.2 gigahertz. The link to this ARRL site is also in the description below. A lot of people asked, where are you finding this? So we're going to scroll down here to 70 centimeters first, okay, and see the proposed areas of the band where you're going to operate for different things. Like ATV would be amateur television, and that would be in the beginning of the band. Amateur television is pretty cool. I'm not sure how popular it is anymore, but they had repeaters set up that was big in the 80s and 90s where people can send live video on amateur TV, on UHF, to a repeater, and people can watch it, like broadcast at a ham fest, or, and specialized gear to receive it, but it was pretty cool, and I'm not sure how many people do that anymore. Earth, Moon, Earth, that's, just like it says, from the Earth, off the Moon, back to the Earth. UHF is really popular on EME, 2 meters and UHF. And that's why it's good to know, again, because if you're over here, sideband, you could potentially disrupt the users on EME that are trying to decode without even seeing it on a waterfall. They're trying to use every bit of resource they have to decode a signal, and you go in there in the wrong area and start transmitting on CW or sideband, you could totally disrupt their communications. So there's a place for that on the band for you. Weak signal CW, 70 centimeter calling frequency for sideband. Propagation beacons, yes, UHF can propagate. It can have a contact, 300 or 400 miles away on sideband. You can do that. Satellite, because satellites, we usually have a 2 meter uplink and a UHF downlink or vice versa. So there's satellite frequencies, more ATV, and FM towards the top for simplex 446, which a lot of people don't use. I wish there was more people on UHF simplex in the area. And repeater inputs and outputs. So your repeaters usually start around 442 and they end around 449. So it's a 5 megahertz offset. So if you're transmitting at 442.5, you're coming out 447.5 on the repeater, and vice versa. Then we look at 33 centimeters here, 900. And there's some stuff here, look at the repeater inputs, 25 megahertz split. And there's different areas where, appropriate for different operating methods. Weak signal, and you can do sideband CW and FM, probably even AM on 900 megahertz. And the repeaters should tell you the offset and, tones and whatever else you have to use to get into the repeaters. There are beacons on 900. I'm not sure where, though. I'm not sure how many beacons are on there. But UHF 900, yes, you can propagate. You can have an opening, a tropospheric ducting or something like that, and end up talking to somebody further than you would normally. It can happen. I don't know how often, but it can. Broadband multimedia, including amateur television, digital amateur television, and slow scan TV. That's on here. And then FM up top, simplex calling frequency, or just simplex, and repeater inputs and outputs. So your repeaters, generally your sideband of CW is in the lower portion, and your FM and repeater is in the upper portion. And we'll go one more here to 23 centimeters, 1.2 gig. And, I haven't, again, done anything here, but look, amateur television channel 1, channel 2, channel 3, satellite uplinks, experimental, point-to-point, a lot of stuff here. And the D-Star that I told you about would be in here on 1.2 gig for the ID1. I'm not sure where they operate that, probably on the repeater frequencies. If there's a digital calling frequency proposed for D-Star, I'm not sure. But you can look at all this and see if you're interested in this. You can find groups online that are big-time activists on 1.2 and 900 using TransVerdures and such to get on there. And won't talk about this, but look, 13 centimeters, 3.3 gigahertz, 5 centimeters, 5.65 gigahertz, 10 gigahertz. I mean, it's up here, So there's above 10.5, you're licensed. So that's just showing you the 70 centimeters, 33 centimeters, and 23 centimeters. So you can get an idea of, there is things being done on those bands. If I look at dxmaps.com and try to see what's going on here on 432 megahertz, I don't see any recent, unless I click on list. There's a few here from today. 432 megahertz sideband contacts from these users here. And looks like it was 400 miles, 300 400 miles of contacts that they're making. And they reported that. So not sure how often. If I click on above 450, of course, we have nothing here. So again, there is a place and a fascination with UHF contests or contacts, but at this time right now, there's really not that much. I mean, if I go over here to let's say 20 meters, I'm sure you'll see a drastic difference. Okay? of people reporting spots on 20 meters compared to something like UHF, But hey, I'm not discouraging you. Try it if you want. Research about it. Find a group on Facebook or somewhere and see what they do. I've showed in the last couple videos on this with the 220 and the 2 meter videos about getting on UHF sideband if you don't have a rig. And I'm not familiar or haven't used the TransVerdure store models, but I've seen a couple people that have used them. And basically a TransVerdure will allow you to get on 432 sideband with any 28 megahertz radio. So you would have a 10 meter radio, transmit into it, and it would come out 432 sideband. So it may be that 28.0 is 432 and 28.2 is 432.2. I have never used one of these from the store, but I'm just saying this is about the easiest I could find online. And an FT991A or a couple other ICOM or a Kenwood TS2000 have VHF, UHF, FM, and sideband built in. But if you don't have one of those radios and you don't want to buy a $1,400 radio for UHF sideband, the cheapest way to go would be a TransVerdure, which would allow you to use any 10 meter radio that you may have now, or a radio that does 10 meters and operate on 220, 144, or 432. And I'm sure there's TransVerdures for 900 and above. But this is by far the cheapest way to get on and enjoy UHF on sideband. So that about wraps it up. This hopefully just gave you some insight. We can go on and on about different concepts in UHF and different bands and what people have done. But again, what I've said in the video is I want you, the viewer, if you're familiar with this, and you probably know more about the 1.2 gigahertz band than I do. I'm just here merely giving you a little bit of information to the people that don't know. But please put your comments and stories about what you've done on those. Brag a little bit about it. Tell me how many years you've been on 900, why you prefer 900 over 440. The other people like to see that and read it in the comments. I love when people post a comment and they answer questions to others on the comments below this video. It's great. So more than welcome to tell me what you think about it. And thumbs up on the video for the effort. Click subscribe. And this will conclude the Ham Bands video series. And in the future, we may start something else like this. But now, if you're just seeing this video and you want to see all of them, start at the 10 meter. I started at the 10 meter band and went to 12, 15, 17, 20, 30, 40, 60, 80. Then I went into VHF, then 220, and then 440. So check them out one at a time if you're a new hobbyist or you're a seasoned professional that's stuck on 20 your whole life. You've never done any other thing on any other HF band. Check out the videos. Learn a little bit from each one. Let me know in the comments what you think. And we got more videos on the way. It's been hectic around here, guys. I've been slammed. Got some big news coming up shortly. So stay tuned and more videos on the way. From KJ4YZI 73.